Treating everybody with respect and dignity and truly listening to everybody's story and everybody's perspective is absolutely key.
And the fact that ABC has a Latino reporter from the barrio helps them tell stories that maybe they would overlook, if I hadn't lived those experiences.
In our experiences of listening to people in the community, what we have learned really, the population that we take care of, they talk about four major themes, and one of those is poverty. So what can we do for economic mobility to break that cycle of intergenerational poverty? Another one is food insecurity. That is just big with so many people. Digital equity, quite honestly, because think about so many people that just can't get online. We take that for granted, right? But so many people don't have connections, they don't have the tools, and how can they possibly compete and move themselves ahead? And then the last one is access to healthcare. So those are the main themes that we get from listening. But it's interesting that we had a group just a few months ago. They came and talked to us, and we said, "So what's the most important thing to you?" And they were a group from the Colonias down in the Rio Grande Valley.
Boy, I've done stories in the Colonias.
Yeah, and we assumed that our bias was that they were going to say one of those four things. That's going to be food or the water that's making them sick or something like that.
And they surprised you.
They surprised us, and they said transportation. They said because many of us don't have a car, and those of us that do have one car, and so whoever goes to work takes the car. So most of us don't have any way to do anything except sit in our house in the colonia where there are no services. And we didn't even think about that. So we had our built-in bias that it's just
thought you knew it all.
That's one of the more current learnings that we had. So what's important? Why is it important to shine a light on our own biases? And that's something that you learn and you do through What Would You Do? And just kind of curious what you've learned from that.
Well, I'm a storyteller. I'm a reporter, and that's all I wanted to do was shine a light on issues like my community in San Antonio and like Las Colonias, and then beyond that in Africa. And I've been blessed by ABC to be able to by a higher power and then by a network that allowed me to go do these stories on children who live in the sewer systems of Colombia, South America, children who cut sugarcane, Haitian black children who are forced to work on sugarcane plantations in the Dominican Republic, blood diamonds that are being harvested in Sierra Leone, the Congo and the pygmy population in the Congo that's being obliterated, and timber is being cut down and animals are being eliminated. I even did a story in Borneo on a native population called the Penan Indians, the last nomadic tribe in the world, and they were fighting timber cutters who were just clear cutting their rainforest. So all of those stories, I just wanted to shine. I've always had that in me, and maybe it's from my mom, because my mom always was very curious, and I was a curious kid in school. In class at Rhodes Junior High, at the end of the school day at 3 p.m, when the teacher would say, "Okay, students, anyone else have any questions? That's the end of the day." And I was the first one to raise my hand. And she would say, all the other kids would let out a big moan, angry that I was delaying the class from getting dismissed because I was so curious. I wanted to know more and more. But, with What Would You Do? I'm a storyteller and I'm a reporter, but with What Would You Do? I wanted to hold up a mirror to American society. I wanted to know, how do you unlock the power and the light that exists in each and every one of us so that we're all better equipped to say, hey, that's wrong, and to speak up, or how can I help? And that was how we stumbled upon doing this little show called What Would You Do? Now 18 years ago, What better tool to do that with than with hidden cameras and on national television? Again, ABC giving me the big window to do this and present it to millions of Americans. And we're constantly surprised. It reminds us that, there are heroes out there, because in every one of our scenarios there's someone wonderful someone that's often the least person you would expect, who does something remarkable. But it also reminds us that we have work to do, Jamie, that many people don't stand up and don't get involved and don't sound the alarm and don't lend a helping hand. The show reminds us that we got work to do.
We do. We do. You talked about being curious, so I want to take what you just said a little further.
Okay.
I'm really interested. How did the show really? You talked about the beginning, but you and ABC, I'm sure there was some dialogue. I'd love to know exactly how that went to come up and say, let's take this idea and go with it, which has now been 18 years. How many shows go 18 years anymore? I mean, not many.
No, they have not lasted very long. 2020 has lasted, Dateline at NBC, in 60 Minutes. Yeah. Very few magazines carry on for decades.
I'd love to learn about the dialogue that you guys went through to really run with that thing.
So I was reading an article in the New York Times by a writer whose column was called The Ethicist, and it's still in the Times, in the Sunday magazine every Sunday. And he would write, the writer would write about ethical dilemmas that he would face every, day to day. And one of the dilemmas he wrote about was about women, babysitters who are supposed to be taking care of a child. He had a baby. And he said, I go to the park, and babysitters and nannies who were there, when the parents aren't around, they're ignoring the kid, and they're a terrible babysitter. Meanwhile, the kid could run dangerously close to traffic. How do you tell a child's parents that the babysitter's doing a terrible job? So I read that one, and I said, wow, we can do that better. We can put hidden cameras on this and hide them in the bushes, in a park, or in the playground where the nannies are taking the kids, and then have an actor pretending to be a very dismissive babysitter or nanny. And we have an actor child, maybe 4 or 5 years old. And in New York, there's all kinds of actors. You can find them. So that was the very first one we did. A nanny, who was ignoring the child that she's supposed to be taking care of. What would other people do if they see that at the park? And it was remarkable, Jamie. People stepped in. So a group of mothers band together and came and said, "Are you the babysitter? Why aren't you taking care of him?" And she would have her headsets on, or she's on her phone texting or shopping on Amazon. And the other parents didn't know what to do with that very first "what would you do" scenario. But they came up with an ingenious idea. They wrote a note on a piece of paper and they stuffed it in the child's backpack. And the note said, "You don't know me, but call me, please, because I want to tell you about your babysitter." Wow. And that was the very first one. And the network liked it. It was part of 2020. And then the network asked me if we could do a whole hour of like 5 scenarios. I said, yeah, we can do that. And then they said, can you do 3 hours this season? I said, yeah, I think we can. And then can you do 6 hours? And now we're doing 9-hour seasons. So we've done about 1,500 scenarios.
Pretty amazing.
All that time.
It's really such a great show because it makes you feel uncomfortable sometimes, the dilemmas that you all present, and it makes you think, gosh, what would I do? Would I do the right thing or not? And
I also love the kids love the show. Yeah. I mean, some of our biggest fans are little ones. You saw the little girl that just walked in before we started doing this. She's 12 years old, and she was so excited to meet me because she watches What Would You Do all the time. I love the show. I hope we continue doing it forever. In the beginning, I thought we would run out of ideas. I mean, how many can you do? But here we are. We've done more than 1,000 scenarios and 18 seasons. It just, I think America needs it right now more than ever. Someone wrote on social media the other day, the world would be a better place if we all thought John Quiñones was in the next room monitoring our behavior with hidden cameras, because we would be on our best behavior. Exactly. The show tests character. And what is character? It's not what we do when everyone's watching. That's very easy. We're all on our best behavior when people are watching. It's what we do even when no one is watching.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's what hidden cameras do. They make people believe that no one is watching, but they are.
Yeah. So clearly, I think it has shifted the way people perceive others. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I think I think it reminds us that we have to that we shouldn't judge so easily, right? We shouldn't, the moment, and we all do it, anyone who denies that they don't notice race is lying. The minute we meet someone, we sort of size them up by the accent in their voice, the color of their skin, how they're dressed, and we make judgments about that, preconceived notions. And the key, say the experts, is that we have to stop ourselves and this is what the show teaches you, I think, that before you assume the worst of a person, stop yourself for 10 seconds and listen to them and ask them questions and try to, like I said, get to know them. You'll be surprised how often those people want the same things for their family and their children that you want for yours, and how similar we are. But it just takes a reminder that not to judge so quickly, and we're all trigger happy to do that too often in this country, especially now. I think the country needs the show now more than ever because it's very divided on so many levels.
Yeah, I totally agree. Well, a person's story is just so crucial to the work that we do. And one good example that we are working on right now is developing these community councils. And so we have 12 strategic areas of opportunity. Mm-hmm. And by the end of this year, we'll have 7 of these community councils. And so the community councils, we make sure that at least half of the people on these councils are people with lived experiences, people that are actually living through what we're trying to help them with. And they are a direct line to our board. They get to actually talk to our board. That's one of the groups that we found out about transportation.
Yeah.
So
you wouldn't have known.
So it's just so important.
I love the work you do and the way you do it. So many other American can learn so much from. So many other groups can learn, and in all kinds of walks of life can learn from what you're doing. It's what reporters try to do. We try to listen, and the fact that ABC has a Latino reporter from the barrio helps them tell stories that maybe they would overlook. If I hadn't lived those experiences, and was all too familiar with them.
Can you think of a specific episode that sparked change?
Yeah, one of my favorites. Well, there's been a couple. Again, when you do more than 1,000, there have been moments when I'm in tears behind the scenes, watching it on hidden camera unfold. In tears sometimes because no one will do anything or no one seems to care, and then in tears because someone just out of nowhere comes up and says something beautiful. And often, as I said, it's someone you least expect. We'll be doing a scenario about race, and in walks this big dude with a shaved head and tattoos and a motorcycle. And I'll tell our security people, watch out for this guy, man, be careful. And he turns, because I'm thinking he's the racist. I was wrong. He's the nicest. He's the big teddy bear who embraces the victim of racism. Conversely, there'll be some little old lady with a beautiful little pink hat on and a flower, and she's the meanest person you can imagine. But I think that my favorites and the ones that have had sparked the most reaction have been the ones we did on race, interracial couples, where we were doing a scenario in Harlem, in New York, in an all-black setting and at a barbershop, where we had done it in a white community before, and I got all these letters and social media postings saying, well, you shouldn't make white people look like racists. Why don't you go to Harlem and do it there? There'll be as many racists there, and perhaps. So we said, good idea. We'll do it where everyone in the scenario is black because we're in Harlem. So we had a woman walk in, a hairdresser, cutting a guy's hair who's black. Both of them are black. And then walks his girlfriend, who is this white blonde girl. And the girl cutting his hair says, you're with her? Why are you with her? Aren't there enough strong black women in the world? Why do you have to be with a white girl? And he goes, that's my girlfriend. I love her. And she said, what message does it, we were giving these lines to say, and she was being very racist as a black person. And one lady overheard it, and she happened to be getting her hair cut, and she's black. And she happened to work in HR. And she says, what are you saying? She goes, I just don't like him being with that white girl. She said, "Honey, what's wrong with you? Look at that. You're both beautiful. If she was lying on the street bleeding, would you stop and help her, or would you ignore her because she's white?" She said, "Honey, it's all about hugs." And the girl said, "Hugs? Hugs? What's hugs?" She goes, "Hugs. Hugs. Helping us grow spiritually.
Oh, nice.
That's what it's all about." She said, "Come here. Come together." And she said, "Together we walk." And they started walking out of the barber shop. We were all in tears because she taught us such a beautiful lesson about hugs,
Yeah, that's beautiful.
And then we also had the woman who was homeless. I don't know if you want to hear that one.
Yeah.
We were doing a story about what would you do if you're walking down the sidewalk and the person in front of you collapses. This could have a medical angle.
Yeah.
And you don't know whether they fainted from sun or cold or whether they've had a heart attack. You don't know anything about medicine. And we did it at 8, 9, 10 in the morning by the train station in Newark, New Jersey, when people were in a hurry to get on the train to go to New York. So now, not only do you not know about medicine to help someone who has collapsed on the sidewalk, you also don't have time. You're in a hurry. You got to get to work or school. Yeah. What do you do? What would you do? So when we did it with a well-dressed businesswoman, she collapses, an actor, and as soon as she collapsed, well-dressed woman in her 40s, people helped her. Man, right away, people put a coat over her. They fashioned a pillow under her head, and they called 911. Now, 911 knows not to come. They know, we've told them that we're doing the show. So it was pretty impressive, though, that everyone helped this well-dressed businesswoman. But then I said, wait a minute. Why don't we change actors? And instead of a well-dressed businesswoman, it's a homeless man who's elderly, a man in his 80s, and he's dirty, filthy, disheveled, smelly, and he's carrying a beer can in his hand. So we got an actor to play that role, an elderly actor who was very good, a stunt artist too, who could fall very convincingly. So he's walking along with his beer can along the sidewalk in Newark, New Jersey, and he collapses. 88 people go by, and no one is stopping to help the man on the ground. People are stepping over him. One lady made the sign of the cross and kept walking. We were blown away, and I said, well, I guess if you're a well-dressed businesswoman, people will help, but if you're not, you're out of luck. And I'm about ready to come out and interview people about why they didn't do anything. But before I could get out there, I heard the tapping of a walking cane on the sidewalk. We didn't see anyone, but then into the frame of the hidden camera comes this beautiful African-American woman who's stumbling along with a cane because she has suffered a stroke, Jamie. And guess what? She's homeless too. Oh. And guess what? She stops to try to help because she doesn't have a phone, right? So she can't call 911. So she starts asking people going by, excuse me, do you have a phone to call 911 for this man? 37 more people, we're counting them, go by. No one, they're all ignoring her. She did something we didn't expect. She stumbles down and she takes the beer can out of the actor's hand. And she stumbles with her walking cane over to the trash can and throws it away as if she was thinking, maybe, just maybe, if people don't think he's a drunk, maybe they'll help, right? She tried to give him a little bit of dignity, right? Didn't help. 48 more people go by. We're counting them. No one is stopping to help. She was so angry. The hidden camera was really tight on her face, and she was made a fist to the heavens. And she was almost like cursing God, saying, she was angry. How can you allow this to happen? She was pointing it to him. And then she bent down again and did something we didn't expect. The actor, we heard it because the actor was wearing a wireless microphone, the guy on the ground. And she didn't know he was an actor, right? So she says to him, sir, I don't know your name, but I'm going to call you Billy. She said, Billy, my name is Linda Hamilton. And don't you worry, my man, I'm homeless too. And I'm going to stay here until help arrives. And then finally, a woman stops and calls 911. And we're all relieved it had been hours. So we come out, and I'm interviewing everyone. And in all the chaos that happens when I come out with the cameras, people are excited. We have everyone sign a release. Our hero disappeared. Linda Hamilton, the woman who stopped to help, left. So we never found her. But we put the scenario on the air anyway. And we said her name was Linda Hamilton, the woman who helped, the hero. And the day after it aired, we got hundreds of phone calls and emails and social media saying, who was that woman? We want to help her. Our viewers set up a GoFundMe page where they started raising money for her called Touched by an Angel with her picture from the TV screen. So now we have to go find her, right? 2 weeks later, my producer said, John, let's do an update. So we went back to Newark, New Jersey, and we have her picture posted at liquor stores, homeless shelters, train station, and we found her. So I sit on some church steps now to do an interview about why she helped that day. And I said, remember the man? She said, oh, yes, I remember. I said, well, you've caused quite a stir. They're calling you a hero. They're calling you an angel. Linda Hamilton, do you consider yourself an angel or a hero? She said, no way, John Quiñones, no way. She said, let me tell you what happened then. She said, I think God put me on that corner, on that street, on that day, because he knew you were there with your What Would You Do cameras. And he wanted to teach people a lesson. And who better to teach that lesson than someone who has walked in the shoes of the homeless?
Yeah, I think God had a hand in that also. And the moral of the story is don't judge a book by its cover.
Absolutely.
Everybody has unconscious biases of some sort, and we all have to try to recognize those and fight through those and treat everybody with dignity and respect.
Yes.
And that's what God wants us to do.
Yeah, we all have those biases.
Yeah.
Like I said, we just have to stop ourselves and remind ourselves.
So what would you like the listeners to take away from this? What could you do? The power of perspective. What would be your dream for people to take away from your great story?
Oh, just put yourselves in the shoes of the, for lack of a better word, victim, whoever is being maligned, put yourselves in those shoes. Walk in my shoes. Walk in that homeless man's shoes. Walk in the shoes of an immigrant who is here simply trying to make a better life for their family. Walk in the shoes of the mom who's struggling with a child with autism, and just pause yourself. Count your blessings, first of all, and that's what I do every morning, for the simplest things, for my dog greeting me, for having a roof over my head, for having a vehicle that I can drive, for our health, and if you do that, then you'll be more likely to be more compassionate, because in the end, that's what it's all about, You have to care for our fellow brother, man and woman, and not judge by their sexuality or their politics or their ethnicity. We're all one.
Well, I think you and your show have helped a lot of people become better people through the years. There's no question about it. I want to thank you so much for doing this with me. It's been my dream ever since January when you did this for our 550 team members.
That was amazing.
You made a big difference. You set us in a positive light going to the next 30 years at Methodist Healthcare Ministries. And I just think that, treating everybody with respect and dignity and truly listening to everybody's story and everybody's perspective is absolutely key. And so I just want to thank you for helping tell that story to everybody who listens. If anybody would like to know more about Methodist Healthcare Ministries, we have our website, mhm.org. We'd love for you to learn a little bit more about us and what we do. So, John, thank you once again.
Thank you. Congratulations on 30 years.
30 years.
30 more.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much.
What a pleasure, Jamie. Thank you.